maybe it's a misconception, but I think there is an idea that from people outside the culture that people practicing BDSM are somehow working out some past trauma through that practice.
Mhm.
Yeah, what are your thoughts or findings on this?
There's been some pretty good research. I shouldn't say pretty good. That sounds like I'm minimizing it. There's been some very solid research and that has tried to investigate this question. And what they found was that there is a subset of BDSM practitioners who have a history of trauma. And within that subset, there's some people who are very consciously going through what we would call a corrective emotional experience that whereas in the first instance there was no negotiation, there was no consent, and there was also no control. They are re-entering a space in which there's consciously and voluntarily surrendering control after negotiation and consent, and they are empowered because they're choosing it this time. And they know ultimately they have the power to stop it by using a safe word. And so it becomes something that they experience as healing. But this is not something that's true for everybody that enjoys BDSM. So if the question is, um, do people enjoy BDSM because they were traumatized as young people? The answer is no. That is not universally true, and it's because it's only a subset. And then we have people outside the world of BDSM who were traumatized.
Hmm.
uh,
Right. Not everyone who is traumatized practices BDSM. Not everyone who practices
Thank you.
BDSM was traumatized. Yeah.
You got it.
Right.
Maybe I'm like becoming too fussy about how I'm trying to describe it, but you got it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought that was something I appreciated about the film too. I think so many contemporary films are kind of a product of what's been called, what I think of as trauma culture, where
Yeah, right.
or therapy culture more generally, where a lot of films, I think, for me, are ruined because it all becomes about the character's healing of trauma, and there's a lot of therapy speak, and it kind of loses the excitement and charge of watching a drama play out, and then maybe getting curious about the subtext and background of the characters and all that. Like it's made so kind of explicit now.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I appreciated about the film, that it wasn't like made clear that, that Colin, the sub character, is like working out some kind of trauma. Like his family just seems so kind of normal and like bog standard English family. And he's quite open with them. They're involved with his life. There's no shame when he shaves his head and starts wearing his, the padlock around his neck. He
Yeah.
even brings Ray over for dinner, kind of
Yeah.
reluctantly. But so I like how they didn't play into that whole, I don't know, the trend that I'm seeing in a lot of cinema these days.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's some people and that speculate, and I think you and I did a little bit of it at the beginning of the interview. Like what makes Ray tick, and is there some trauma in his history that he's unable to either be more expressive or to be more communicative, or to be more relational, But I stay very open to the possibility. Like that this is who this guy is. He knows who he is. Take him or leave him. You're going
Hmm.
to engage with him on his terms, and that's part of what it means to be a dominant. And he's not apologetic. He's not going to apologize for it. I mean, there's a line which I think is really very psychologically astute when they're having dinner with the parents, and the mother leans forward and says, "I don't think I like the way you talk to my son."
Hmm.
Right? And his response is, I realize that I make you uncomfortable, right? But I think basing what's good for your son on what makes you comfortable is rather ignorant and not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a great confrontation. He didn't just kind of, yeah, he didn't stop being himself in that situation where there was a lot of kind of pressure around, let's just have a nice dinner with my parents and show them that you're a normal guy. Like he's himself
Yeah.
for better, for worse, through and through, and consistently. Like there's congruence there, apparently.
Yeah. And see, I think that there's an impulse to problematize that kind of look. If he has an aspect that's not relational in a conventional sense, or right in some kind of a normative sense, are we problematizing that? Well, there's something wrong with him. I remember when I saw the movie. Boy, big spoiler. Stop listening if you don't want to know this. Sorry. But you get to the end of the movie, and after the, sort of ideal romantic day off, he disappears. Somebody in the audience says, "Oh, he couldn't handle the intimacy."
That was
And
my
I,
reaction too. It's like, oh, he's disappeared again. He's moved on.
yeah, like, oh, like they got too close. So let's talk about that because I think that there's this moment which is perhaps the most enigmatic moment of the film, and to me, then the most enjoyable because I may spend the rest of my life puzzling over what all was going on there. There is a moment where they finally kiss, and that is one of the sort of big areas of conflict. You know that it's something that Colin would like, and it's something that Ray simply does not do. But here they finally have the romantic kiss, and it's a kiss that Ray initiates. And then the camera gives us a close-up of Ray's face, and we see this expression of deep pain. At least that's how I interpret the expression on his face. And what was happening for him in that moment, is a really interesting question because Ray as a character remains opaque in many, many ways. He becomes this profoundly important person in Colin's life, and yet how well do we ever really know him? You know, it just turns all of
Hmm.
our conventional ideas about intimacy on their head,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? And yet, I think most people seeing the film will tell you this is a very intimate relationship between these two men. But
Hmm.
it's not intimate in the sense of revelation that I'll tell you everything about me and what's going on inside me and what I'm thinking and feeling. But it's something else that's sharing something of the essence of who these two people are, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you experience that. I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as we continue this conversation, I want to take back what I said about Ray being like a sociopath. I mean, I think that's a possibility, and that he did respond to intimacy, letting down his guard on that day where they were just more a playful couple. That he did respond to that in a kind of a defensive way and just took off like it was too much for him. But I don't know. I mean, that's, yeah, maybe just me kind of reading into it based on my own biases and prejudices about what real intimacy,
Mm,
or love looks like. I mean, Colin was kind of heartbroken and, abandoned in a way, just as they were kind of maybe opening up the relationship and adding more complexity and things like that, and maybe more of a give and take, his needs getting met, and to have this guy just split, yeah, it was certainly painful.
mhm.
But again, like there's always the question, like how's he going to negotiate that next relationship where the film ends? Like, will that become more explicit from the get-go that, I need at least a day off or something like that?
Yeah.
So we don't know. And I like that kind of openness too.
And that's why I read the quote from Harry Lighton, where he says heartbreak, is going to happen, or
Hmm.
bad things are going to happen in a relationship. I mean, this is part of what intimacy. We don't experience intimacy without vulnerability, and I mean the root the word vulnerability is woundedness. The
Right.
vulnera, that we're going to be wounded, and then we're going to be changed. It's one of the ways that a relationship changes us, and sometimes for the better. That, it's not only that we come out scarred and guarded, and no, I'm never going to let that happen to me again, but sometimes we come out wiser and
Hmm.
be like, yeah, no, this is part of what people do to each other, or this is part of how love works. And then we go through heartbreak, and it's part of living the full game of life. I mean, that's the other meaning of individuation, is that you experience it all.
Yeah. And Hillman was so great about this, is valuing all of human experience, really. And I'm reminded of his essay on betrayal and like the necessity of betrayal. And so who knows what Colin will make of that betrayal after the fact.
Right.
He may
Yeah.
come out wiser and more assertive, in the beginning of negotiating the new relationship. We don't really know. But even if it has us thinking about that, then the film is working in a kind of soul-making way for us.
Beautiful. Beautifully put, Brian. It was so true. And we also don't know what happens to Ray after the film.